Democrat Graham Plattner has suspended his campaign for U.S. Senate in Maine after days of intense political pressure to drop out of the race ahead of Monday's ballot deadline. His candidacy was thrown into chaos earlier this week after a former girlfriend accused him in the media of sexually assaulting her years ago. Plattner has denied those allegations, but the controversy led to a number of top Democrats pulling their endorsements and a mass exodus of voter support. Here's part of the 11-minute social media video that the embattled candidate posted last night.
I think, as many of you know, over the past couple days, I have faced some very serious allegations, and I just want to make it clear, this is all false. The things that have been claimed did not happen. It's not real. There is a reason that this is happening now. I only have until July 13th until I am officially the nominee. This was the last week to try to get me off of the ballot. And that's why this is occurring. It's not the false allegations, though, that have brought us to where we are. It's the fact that they are being used by the political establishment to put structural pressure on us. We live in a political system that is not built for normal people. It is a system that is built structurally to make sure that movements like ours cannot flourish. That if they begin to succeed, they can be crushed. We are suspending campaign operations. This is incredibly difficult because I know that some will think it's an admission of guilt, and it most certainly is not. We're not doing it because of the allegations. We're doing it because of the structures that are being taken away from us by those in power.
Okay.
All right. Well, Maine has less than 3 weeks to find a new nominee. State law requires nominees be selected by the fourth Monday in July. Plattner addressed the replacement process in his announcement, warning that Washington Democrats should not get a say in this.
What comes next needs to come from the people. Needs to come from the people of Maine. Needs to come from the voters who on June 9th, at a strength of over 150,000, the largest number in the history of Maine primaries, said no to this kind of politics. I'm not trying to dictate to anyone who it should be or how we get there, but I will say this. It needs to be open, transparent, and democratic. People in D.C. need to stay in D.C.
So, Willie, a couple things. First of all, he denied these charges as clearly and as strongly as you can deny these charges. Got to say, it's fascinating that there are people in the media, people that we know, that are just summarily calling him a rapist now. For Republicans listening, this is something that Mika and I also said about Brett Kavanaugh. Saying that people would come on this network and call Brett Kavanaugh a sexual harasser or a rapist without any due process at all. Perhaps they needed to take a deep breath. That said, regardless of how this was going to play out, the Democratic Party said, we're not going to support you. They weren't going to fund him, so he had no pathway forward. I just want to say, Willie, I mean, Republicans that are spending their time on Fox News and social media, outraged that Democrats would dare support a candidate who was accused of sexual impropriety, even when that candidate vehemently denied that. That is beyond hypocritical. That is just sheer farce. This is even beyond South Park levels of farce. What I am reading on X, what I am reading in social media, what I am seeing on TV after the past decade. And by the way, if you want to talk about morally challenged candidates, you don't have to look at the White House. You don't have to look at Republicans bowing and scraping for the past decade. Just look at Texas. Look at who Republicans are behind as they're trying to suggest that Tallarico is gay. Well, look at Paxton. He's not. I mean, the hypocrisy. Republicans should just really just shut up. They really should just shut up if they're going to be critical of Democrats for supporting a morally challenged candidate or one who's been accused of doing things that are morally challenged. It is so hypocritical, Willie. And they should just leave this to the Democrats to clean up their own house.
Yeah, you've had prominent Republicans, including the former Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, coming out and saying Republicans walk away from candidates with troubling past that include sexual allegations of sexual assault. I mean, come on. I guess they're just hoping that people have such short memories or are too dumb to remember or see in front of them what's happening. So you're totally right about that. They've surrendered the moral high ground a long time ago. So we'll thank them to have a seat in this conversation. But the larger question here, Jackie Alemany, as we listen to Graham Plattner defiantly in that statement yesterday saying, these allegations are false, but I cannot move forward because the rug has been pulled out from under me, despite the fact that I won 72% of the primary vote, despite the fact that Maine Democrats, with all these other allegations out there, said they still wanted me to be the nominee. I can't go forward because people in Washington, let's say, for example, the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee led by Chuck Schumer and Kirsten Gillibrand said, we're not funding your campaign. We're not giving you voter data. We're not going to help you at all. He's saying, I can't move forward. I want to move forward, but I cannot. So now the question will be, how much say does he have in this convention for next 2.5 weeks that Maine Democrats are scrambling to put together to find a new candidate? How much say will he have or his movement have in who the candidate is? He believes it should look like someone like him in his progressive values.
Yeah, and last night was the most public display that we have seen since the Politico article came out about this allegation of sexual assault of Graham Plattner trying to exert some leverage here and have a say in tapping his replacement. I think the thing that he's going to run into, the problem that he's going to run into is, one, this obvious deadline, but two, it's also the lack of institutional support from not the establishment, but his own Mainers, his own supporters. I mean, we've had a bunch of reporters who have been on the ground in Maine over the last few weeks. Kevin Fry has been there all week, who are hearing that for voters, they have sort of crossed the Rubicon here. This has been sort of one infraction too many, with this obviously being the most serious of a lot of these allegations. But as we walked through yesterday, from the allegations, from the stories about his Nazi tattoo to all of these Reddit posts to then allegations of infidelity, sexting, to now this sexual assault allegation. There is a trust deficit that has emerged amongst voters. It might not have appeared in the polling just yet, but I'm not sure that Graham Plattner has as much leverage as he thinks he does. And in the process, he is making, again, not just establishment Democrats, but other Democrats even angrier, because he is poisoning the well going forward. He is not necessarily setting up his replacement for success.
It's just funny because for that list that Jackie just made, I mean, for some Republicans, that's just a Tuesday, but whatever. There are so many hypocrisies here that we could go through, but that's not constructive. I'm curious, Katty Kay, what's your gut on how this went down, especially as it pertains to the media and the Democratic Party?
Look, it's really interesting, Mika. I know I've told you my son is living in Rockland, Maine at the moment, and I've been talking to him about, he's been to see Graham Plattner campaign. He's been excited about his campaign, and I've been talking to him on and off during the course of the last few weeks. I was up there with him a week ago, and he represents, I think, the view of many kind of younger Mainers who are saying this is the Democratic Party establishment's fault, and that they are kind of blaming Washington for these stories. Now, whether this has taken it one step further than that will be interesting to see. Do we start seeing all of those Plattner signs that are all over kind of the more liberal areas of Maine? Do they start to come down now? There had been polls showing that he was weak in support with working class Maine voters, more than he was with college-educated Maine voters. But it's interesting the degree to which Plattner himself and many of his followers are saying this is a story that has come out of Washington, and we don't know that we trust Washington, so we don't know that we trust the story. Now, as Jackie says, you can run through that list. I mean, there are now multiple allegations, and I think we have always thought when there is a pattern, you take these things more seriously than when there is just one allegation. But for many people who've supported Plattner, I think they are still thinking this is about the Democratic Party, and that's why they liked Plattner in the first place, because he wasn't out of Washington and he didn't represent the establishment.
Right. Yeah, and Jonathan Lemire, a couple of things. First of all, on all of these allegations, except the last one, Democrats in Maine knew about that. They gave Plattner about 75% of the vote. I think he got more votes in a primary than anybody else. So, again, and it's so rich, Republicans who've basically been telling us for 10 years there are no consequences to personal failings, personal faults. Suddenly, they've become Jim and Tammy Faye Baker. They are shocked and stunned and deeply saddened. Jesus wouldn't approve of this. And yet, what have they been doing for 10 years? What has their Texas candidate been doing his entire political life? The self-righteousness. Oh, they should be so ashamed. But you know they aren't, because they haven't been for 10 years. When you have somebody like Kevin McCarthy that can go on the floor after January the 6th and blame a riot, an insurrection, an attempt to overthrow an American election on Donald Trump, and then get on Fox News and go, well, we Republicans, if somebody does anything wrong, I don't know why I'm doing Lindsey Graham, it just comes natural. We get rid of them. We get it's kind of, that was more of a Lindsey Graham than I don't think I can do Central California. Let me work on that.